Something happened at Fiorano, and Ferrari doesn't want to talk about it. Officially, the SF-26's debut went smoothly. Hamilton stepped into the car. 3 installation laps. Perfectly scripted. Leclerc followed. Photos were released. Everyone smiled. But what the cameras didn't show, what only a few caught from behind the barriers, was something off. 2 slow exits. An abrupt shutdown. And Hamilton, stepping out with a look that didn't match the press release. Now, days later, there are whispers about an anomaly inside the energy deployment system, about a shut-off protocol that wasn't meant to activate, and about a technical safeguard buried deep inside the software. That might have revealed more than Ferrari was ready to show. Because if what happened at Fiorano wasn't just a test glitch, but a symptom of something deeper inside this car, then the SF-26 might not just be radical, it might be unstable. Ferrari's messaging after the Fiorano shakedown was clear, almost rehearsed. The SF-26 completed its filming day without issue. Both drivers did their laps. No red flags. No mechanical reports. Just the usual language, validation, baseline checks, a successful first step. They released 5 photos, 1 video clip, and a press statement so generic, it could have been copied from 2023. Hamilton stepping into the car. Leclerc climbing out of it. Smiles. Calm body language. Everything exactly as it should be. But that's exactly the problem. Because Ferrari knows the season is different. This isn't a mid-cycle update year. It's the build-up to 2026, when new regulations, new engines, and frozen architecture make early testing critical. So when a team like Ferrari says everything went perfectly, and says it that quickly, it raises a question: what are they not saying? What stands out is how little detail they shared. No breakdown of Hamilton's feedback. No mention of tire response. Not a single comment on deployment calibration, which, for a hybrid car, is the first thing you check. Instead, they focused on atmosphere. On how motivated the drivers were. On the positive environment inside the garage. But that only distracts from the one thing that wasn't confirmed. Whether the car systems behaved the way the team expected. Because when you test a new energy delivery strategy, especially one designed to operate in regulatory gray zones, you don't look for performance. You look for silence, stability, predictability. And that's what might have been missing. From a distance, it looked like a clean run. No spins. No smoke. No red flags. But for those watching from the fencing at Fiorano, especially local journalists and technical scouts, something felt off. The first anomaly came during Hamilton's 3rd lap. Not an aggressive lap, not fast, but clean. And then, at the far end of the circuit, he lifted. Hard. No traffic. No yellow flags. Just a sudden reduction in speed. And a cool-down sector that looked premature. Seconds later, the SF-26 coasted into the pit lane, not at full recharge pace, but in silence. Almost too quiet. As if the hybrid system had disengaged earlier than expected. What followed was a nearly 20-minute pause. No explanation. No garage activity visible to cameras. Just a closed garage door, and a delay that nobody commented on. Then came Leclerc's run. Visibly more aggressive, probably planned that way. But during his 2nd lap, the throttle trace from trackside microphones suggested an uneven deployment curve. Acceleration looked staggered, not smooth. The official term? Data collection mode. But those who've seen Ferrari run real test programs before, especially with experimental energy logic, know the signs. A delay that long? A shutdown that clean? That's not a random glitch. That's a safeguard protocol, triggered when internal systems detect a pattern they can't reconcile. And in a car built around timing-based deployment strategies, that's the last thing you want to see. Because it doesn't just suggest a fault. It suggests unpredictability. And when you're trying to operate in the gray areas of FIA oversight, the one thing you can't afford is unpredictability. Ferrari didn't call it a failure. They didn't acknowledge a problem. And that's what makes it suspicious. Because in Formula One, teams often reveal more through silence than they ever do in a press release. And when a team with Ferrari's history avoids discussing energy deployment, software stability, or power unit behavior during a debut run, they're not just protecting the car. They're protecting the concept. This isn't about a broken part. It's about a system that may have operated exactly as designed. Just in a way the team didn't expect to be exposed this early. You don't build an experimental deployment system if you're aiming for conventional performance. You build it to manipulate phases of a lap the FIA isn't measuring. To delay torque, redistribute battery release, or camouflage acceleration. But those systems are fragile. And when they trigger safety shutdowns, It's rarely because something failed. It's because something behaved too well, too far outside of normal parameters. And the software responded by shutting it down to avoid detection or escalation. Ferrari knows this. In 2018, they were already investigated for exactly that kind of logic. Fuel flow irregularities that weren't illegal, just too advanced for the rulebook to explain. It took months. There were no penalties. Just a quiet agreement with the FIA. And a sudden, unexplained drop in performance after summer break. This time, the risk isn't just performance being exposed. It's the architecture behind it. Because if the SF-26 hybrid strategy is too aggressive for its own stability, and if that's what caused the anomaly at Fiorano, then Ferrari might be facing a much bigger issue. Not illegality, but unsustainability. The danger isn't the failure itself. It's what happens if that system stops failing. Because if the SF-26 energy logic was responsible for the Fiorano anomaly, and it's not abandoned or rewritten, then Ferrari is committing to a strategy that could define, or destabilize, the first half of 2026. Why? Because every team is building toward a locked power unit architecture. No more late-season redesigns. No experimental overhauls between races. Once these systems are locked in, they stay frozen. Which means any advantage, especially one related to hybrid energy delivery, becomes permanent. Now imagine this. Ferrari solves the Fiorano glitch internally, refines the deployment curve, integrates the logic into Hamilton's preferred mapping, and by the time the lights go out in Bahrain, it works. No more shutdowns. No sensor flags. Just a system that delivers mid-corner torque in a pattern no other team can mimic. And no FIA directive can prove as illegal. That would force a domino effect. Mercedes would demand clarification. Red Bull would issue data-backed protests. McLaren, Aston Martin, Audi, all would scramble to develop similar logic, knowing they're already behind. And the FIA? They'd be caught between two disasters. Sanctioning a system they never declared illegal, or watching the championship spiral into a tech war, with no clear boundaries. All triggered by a failed test. At Fiorano. That, officially, wasn't a failure. Lewis Hamilton didn't join Ferrari to finish third. And he definitely didn't leave Mercedes to play it safe. He came for one reason. To win one final title? In the one car that eluded him for over a decade. So if Ferrari's hybrid system survives its early instability, and if the shutdowns at Fiorano were just the growing pains of a radical new deployment strategy, then Hamilton's role goes far beyond being the one who drives it. He becomes the one who legitimizes it. Because if he starts winning, not by out-qualifying the grid, but by managing energy better across the race distance, then no one will care about rumors. They'll care about results. And the FIA will face a nightmare. Because the moment Hamilton says, "I trust this system, it's legal," the conversation shifts. It's no longer about sensors. It's no longer about software. It's about trust. Hamilton has already walked that line before. After Abu Dhabi 2021. After bouncing on porpoising tracks while others looked away. He knows how to point the spotlight exactly where he wants it. He knows how to turn performance into pressure. And if the SF-26 starts delivering under him, any FIA intervention will be interpreted as political, not technical. That's the real weight Hamilton carries now. He's not just driving a car. He's holding a weapon, one the sport may not be ready for. Ferrari hasn't said a word since Fiorano. No clarification. No technical bulletin. No update on the cause of the shutdown. And maybe, that silence says everything. Because if this wasn't a mechanical failure, if it was a systems trigger, a deployment anomaly, a reaction to something deep inside the hybrid logic, then Ferrari may already know what caused it. And they may have decided to move forward anyway. Which means the real question isn't what broke at Fiorano. It's what happens when it doesn't. Because once this system stabilizes, once it gets through a full race distance without error, it becomes something far more dangerous than a leak or a rumor. It becomes real. And no team will be able to ignore it. Not Mercedes. Not Red Bull. Certainly not the FIA. Because a stable, legal hybrid deployment system, one that manipulates energy timing without triggering enforcement tools, forces everyone else into reaction mode. And if Ferrari gets 3 or 4 races ahead before the grid catches up, the championship could shift before it's even begun. Right now, it's just whispers. A glitch. A test that didn't go to plan. But if this is how the SF-26 behaves under stress, and if this is the version Hamilton believes in, then the story of Fiorano may not be the beginning of a problem. It may be the first sign of something Formula One can't contain. Not this season. Not under these rules. And definitely not once the racing starts.